Redcon 5, let's fucking go. Daicon 5, let's fucking go. Nah, bro, this is Syscon 1, I guess. The thought occurred to me during my second 15-minute shit break of the day while I was browsing Danborough on my phone. And I was like, dude, holy fuck, I am actually uh, doing this again. So what ended up happening is that my parents are out of town. So I got the entire house to myself. And I had thought about this idea a while back, and I'm like, dude, I could totally do a Redcon except entirely by myself. I would do lectures and shit. I would do videos every single day. It would be epic. I am like 3 days into this shit, and I mean, I've actually done something. I finished writing this 10,000 word essay about why Saikano is the best anime of the decade. Unironically. Uh, but other than that, actually, there's another thing. But um, like in terms of actually producing videos, with the exception of this one right here that you're currently sitting down, presumably sitting down watching, um, I haven't done jack shit because usually what ends up happening is I come home and I'm lazy as fuck, so then I do nothing. I just sit there and I sit over there. I watch that. Um, But like I mentioned lectures, and I was like, I've always wanted to do a lecture, like a PCP styled Radcon lecture, where I talk to the camera uh, as much as I can for about like an hour or two, preferably longer. But here's the problem, and the entire point of this video, why I am in a little bit of zetsubou.
絶望した
That like ever since thinking about the idea, I've always been like, you know what, I could totally do a lecture. I want to do a lecture. It's something that I do intend on doing sometime in the future. I just haven't thought about a format or topic or anything. But of course, the problem is the topic. I don't know exactly what to talk about, um, and I am in despair thinking about that. About a month ago, I thought I was going to have a chance to do a lecture, maybe 2 months ago. So I jotted down a couple ideas, but none of them really like jumped out at me thinking that like, hey, the Pars, this is the video you can do. This is the lecture you can do. And there's a few misconceptions on my end of like what exactly a lecture actually constitutes, and what it is, and maybe my own misconceptions about it. So I guess the first thing, my biggest misconception with a lecture, actually, let me talk about the topics, and I'm going to talk about my misconception, and then I'm going to try to circle everything back. So the problem is that, like, my topics were relatively vague. Like, I didn't have one thing that I could jump on, and a lot of it stems from my whole rant that I've already gone on about why I can't get into fandoms, or I don't understand fandoms because I'm not affiliated with any of them. In more broad sense, I am affiliated with the general anime watching uh, otaku circle, I suppose. Not necessarily a part of the community, but I appreciate and I would suppose in a general sense, I am a fan of anime in much the same way I would consider myself a fan of video games or a fan of water. Like, literally anything. It's like the most vague shit possible. I'm trying to get more. I'm trying to get more granular when I'm talking about this, or at the very least with a lecture format. I want to get very specific because, as I've noted with lectures, in watching a lot of the PCP lectures, I've watched almost every single one, with the exception of the One Piece one because it's 4 hours, and I honestly don't give a shit about One Piece, but I'm gonna watch it anyways. Um, the best lectures are the ones that are um, in somewhat specific but broad enough a topic that you can kind of expand upon it exponentially. Like, you can continue to get down, and there's probably like a mathematical phenomenon where that's the case, but like you keep getting, like you keep getting smaller and smaller and more granular, and then it gets even more and more complex as you go on. Kind of like a tree structure, like branching paths, that kind of thing. But like some of my favorite lectures were like that, or just at least were more specific as to point me in a general direction of what I want to do. So I wanted to do something specific. So a couple topics I thought of at the top of my head. I was like, well, I could do something like gore shit, right? Gore shit is a musician that I've listened to extensively over the course of a couple of years. Though I was like, you know what, maybe that's awfully too specific. And here's the problem too that I noted when I was talking about music, is that music tends to be like my default when it comes to talking about something that I don't want anyone else to understand what I'm talking about, in fear that they will be able to deplatform me because I've lived with an incessant fear of being deplatformed for not being knowledgeable enough. And I believe I've talked about this before in something else, I forgot. But like, essentially, like when I was first getting into anime, I was introduced to it by someone I knew. On the flip side, someone from high school, and through a couple, I started to get into it myself, and I discovered Reddit's our anime, and like I was mostly lurking, and I suppose that was my general attitude towards things. Because even when I was a kid, I was on like two message boards. I never really was a commenter. I was more of a lurker. So that's kind of how I approached Reddit, with that lurk more attitude, just kind of figure out what's going on here. And plus, I had seen like two anime at this point, and I didn't want to seem like a retard. Which I think more people should carry that, general attitude towards, and how they carry themselves when they're getting into something new. But essentially, like, I would just lurk around the community and see what kind of shows people consistently talked about, track the trends in my head, added shit to my watch later on my anime list, and then I just watched everything. And I didn't really start talking in our anime until I was maybe like close to 100 shows, in a place where I was comfortable, being able to have a reasonable discussion with a group of people, and being able to name drop a couple things, and being able to understand and have context for the shows that they might potentially provide context for, so I don't seem like a retard. But then by the time I got to there, I was just like, I don't care about our anime. It's a terrible community. It's a terrible. There's like literally nothing going on there. It's awful. It's all seasonal discussions, and it's just people talking about their random bullshit. It's just Twitter. But that's besides the point. The point was that I felt a need to have a certain baseline level of knowledge to be able to appreciate something enough to have a discussion about it. And I feel that way when it comes to a lecture. For example, gore shit. I was like, gore shit, I've listened to a lot of gore shit. I could look on Last FM, and I've scrabbled gore shit like 4,000 times, meaning I've listened to 4,000 gore shit songs. Not necessarily different songs, but 4,000 gore shit songs. But like when I've got to that point, I'm like, well, I've listened to gore shit a decent amount, but I'm not the biggest gore shit fan, right? And then that's where the little goblin on my shoulder starts to come in and say, hey, Pars, you're not a real gore shit fan. There's someone out there who is, listened to more gore shit, has seen him live, have listened to everything that he's done. Those albums that you skipped over, like Loather and Knife Crime, fucking whatever. Those albums? Those people have listened to those albums more times than you have even listened to My Love Still Feels All Wrong. And even though you like that album, you're not a real gore shit fan, so I'm like, fuck. And the reason why I default to music a lot is because my music taste tends to be niche, either by design or like subconscious. Maybe, I don't know, like if the reason why I listen to J-pop so much is necessarily because is it because I like anime? Is it because I want to listen to pop music, but I don't want to listen to mainstream pop music because then people would understand what I'm listening to, so I want to gatekeep my own music taste by listening to something more obscure? Fuck. So that's why I tend to listen to a lot of obscure music, either by designers, because that's just generally what I like. And that's been something that I've done for a while, especially since high school and shit. Like, I listen to obscure metal bands just cause. So then whenever anyone asks who I'm listening to, I just say some random fucking band, and they're like, okay. Immediately kills the conversation, but that was more preferable because I didn't want to have a conversation to begin with, because I don't give a shit about any other power metal bands or whatever. That's actually a lie. Like, a couple power metal bands in moderation, but I didn't listen to like heavy metal and shit. I don't give a crap about them. I've listened to like the only heavy metal band I fucked with was Megadeth, but anyways, music, I was like, that's my default because I could talk about music, and that's why one of the longest videos I ever made and the most amount of research I put into a video was the under 17 one, and even then, I was like, surely there's gonna be some guy who comes out of nowhere and is like, I went to go see that live concert in 2003. I was there before you were fucking uh, able to have a memory, a cognizant memory, because in that year I was like 4. I don't fucking know what was happening, and I definitely wasn't in Japan watching the under 17 final live. Maybe some old fag was, and more power to him. But then that's the thing, that like I was defaulting to music when I was picking Gorsha as a potential topic for a lecture because I was like, well, it's something that's somewhat niche, but it's something that is easy for me to consume, and I have consumed a lot of it, mostly passively, but I have a decent understanding of what gore shit is in the music and the good shit from gore shit to make a lecture for it, because it was something that's somewhat niche. So I defaulted there. But then I was like, I had all those things that I'm like, you know what, even though I do have gore shit 10 on tape right here, and I like him more than I like myself, maybe it's too specific. Maybe there's gonna be the real Gorshit fans that come out of the woodwork or whatever. So I'm like, scratch that idea. I'm gonna go broader. I'm gonna talk about lollycore. But then I remembered I listened to like 3 lollycore artists, and most of lollycore is shit. And I think that's kind of the point. But then I was like, you know what? And this was the one I was actually gonna do, the lollycore lecture. But I found this lollycore manifesto or some shit, like the lollycore encyclopedia or the lollycore Bible or something like that. And I'm like, well, this guy clearly knows more about me. And if I would do this lecture, I would basically just be talking about bullet points from this encyclopedia entry this dude wrote, or like gushing about my love feels all wrong, and the same shit over and over. Like I wouldn't have too much to talk about with that one, so I'm like, fuck, scrap that one. What's another idea I could talk about? Something that I'm stupidly knowledgeable about, like, already. And I thought about anime. I'm like, well, there's a couple anime that I think I could do, and the one that I immediately thought of was Origairu. Then I think and when it comes to any show that I know the most, it would be Origairu. I got a poster right here, got Yukino right here, waifu, got like a figure somewhere, it's somewhere, I don't know. But I was like, Origairu, I could totally do a lecture about that. But then, like, even though that would be the easiest lecture for me to do, I would have to get into the mindset of it, because I've been kind of out of the loop with the show, and I haven't finished the light novels. Like, I've written about that show extensively, enough to, like, fill an actual novel worth of ideas. It's just that, like, I haven't touched the show since the final season ended, and then I finished reading the light novel volume that I was reading at the time, and my phone's at 20%, and I was like, well, I haven't touched it since, so I'm a bit out of it. I'm not in the right headspace to talk about Origairu currently, so I'm like, fuck, scratch that one too. I can't just do one at the drop of a hat. I could do the Yukino Shita Yukino lecture. Oh shit, but I totally forgot every single thing I wrote in that Yukino post from like 30 years ago. Fuck. And I couldn't think of anything. And I was like, is there any video game franchise I care remotely about? Not really. I kind of like Toho, but I've never won CC'd a Toho game. I know a handful of characters. I'm not even the closest to being a big Toho fan. Fuck. I suddenly ran out of ideas, dude, because I realized that I am not into any fandom. There is nothing in this world that I care deeply about that's even remotely specific. I just care about broad terms, it seems. I have never gone down to the fandom level, so when I'm trying to think of a fucking lecture to do, I am in utter despair. I am in shambles right now because I can't think of a fucking idea for a lecture, and this is the only thing I can make of it. At least something that wouldn't come with a lot of research involved with it. There was actually another really good lecture idea. Hopefully I won't get cut off because my phone battery is dying, but I was like, dude, I could do a lecture about Yuyo Yupe, who is the Vocaloid producer, that I've listened to, is easily the most listened to Vocaloid producer. I wrote, almost wrote an entire novel based off his album For Sick Boy. I know all the music almost that his circle put out and ones that he put out individually, just under Yuyo Yupe, and then draw the emotional, the circle. And I'm like, dude, I could fucking do that, because I was actually gonna make a video about that, like another an hour plus a video about the Yuyo Yupe music. But then I'm just like, the reason I didn't make the lecture or even continue entertaining that idea is because in the back of my head, I'm like, I could definitely make that a video. And now, like in a week, someone is gonna release a video about that, because that's just how things go. Not necessarily inspired or related by this post, but just, you know. So then I look back at the PCP lectures and I'm like, dude, these are things these people care a lot about. Like, Kingdom Hearts was Nate's baby. That's what he grew up playing. You know, the Sonichu and Tails Gets Trolled and crap, what was the other one? Kokoro Wish. Those were things that Ben was into. Just by growing up, and that's what he was looking for, and he was following those things passively online at some point. You know, shit, like, what have I followed throughout the years? I've never followed anything closely, and especially never followed a franchise for that long. Maybe I'm just too young to do that, but I don't think I'm that young, at least comparatively. Like, I can't think of shit that I'm into. And then I was like, I could get super vague or super broad, do a lecture about otaku, but that sounds cringe, because I've already said my stuff about it, and it would just end up being like 5 minutes long. I could do a lecture about the word we don't talk about anymore, and that entire subculture around Denpa. But I was like, you know what, that's also kind of cringe, because Denpa is over. It's over. So I'm just like, shit. I have nothing I could talk about. I care about nothing in this world. I guess I'm not going to make a lecture. I'm just going to make a shitty vlog, rambly vlog, spiraling vlog instead. And this is actually the first vlog I've done in a very long time. Now I'm going to put this phone to charge so I could film another one in like 5 minutes.